All right, Caslow. Hello, everybody. Give it up for amazing opening DJ Raya Sun for her positive and uplifting beats that sets the tone for our event. Thank you, Raya. She made the rain stop. That was nice. I see some sun. Thank you, Raya Sun. We're just going to move this table here and we'll get started.
Disconnect these without the go-ahead, because I know sometimes they can make a big noise.
All muted, right, Lee? Yeah. Awesome. He's out of the way. Nice table. Need it?
Sweet.
Want me to carry this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Sharissa. Okay, we're good to continue. I'll just do the intro.
So many chords. So we need to get both of these lights going?
No, it's just me talking.
Yeah, we're good.
But yeah, the panel will come on after.
Hey, Teresa, nice to meet you.
Good to see you in person, finally.
Like 2 minutes. It's crazy,
All right. Look at this crowd. Hello, live streamers. I'd like to, first of all, give thanks to the rainy weather, because without the rain, we wouldn't have the food we rely on. And these rains may help delay the impending fire season, which we know is coming. So let's celebrate the rain, even though it's not raining right now. So all you live streamers, come on down to Caslow Front Street Park. You've passed the initial test of resilience by coming out today. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kootenay Resilience Festival. I'm Jean-Marc from the Kootenay Lake Innovation Center, and my movement partners are Mitch from Kootenay Mountain Culture and Charissa from the Langham Cultural Center. Give it up. Nice. So before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Sinaiaks. We honor and respect the Sinaiaks past, present, and future, and we're committed to co-creating their enduring connection to this land. So today, we kick off a 4-part series with the Food Forum, focusing on creating resilient and equitable food systems. We're thrilled to have you here today with us, and together we're going to explore, discuss, and celebrate the incredible strides being made in our community and bioregion towards food security, decentralized energy, housing innovation, and shared mobility. So for a resilient community and bioregion, food security depends on improvements in housing, energy, and mobility, because these elements are interconnected. Stable housing provides a foundation for people to grow their own food and participate in local food systems. Sustainable energy solutions ensure that food production and distribution are efficient and resilient against disruptions. Effective mobility solutions enable access to markets, reduce food waste, and connect producers with consumers. By addressing these areas together, we create a more robust and sustainable food system. So these first events are kind of like planting a garden for the first time, so bear with us as we experiment, just like permaculture, with companion planting, water management, and energy use to create self-sufficient systems and learn how to collaborate the best way together. So these events are actually the evolution of the Caslow Summer Music Series, where we've done about over 30 shows with our great group of mostly volunteers. Thank you for all the support over the years, really appreciate it. But this is an impact festival, and we're modeled after others done around the world. where conferences are smashed together with music and the beautiful Kootenay creatives in a festival for exciting action. So today, we're delighted to present an amazing lineup of speakers and musicians who will share their knowledge, experiences, and creative with us. Our goal is to dive deep into these important issues, capture all proposed solutions, and invite our communities into ongoing engagement online. This way, the most critical solutions will receive the necessary support to thrive. I know you have questions on how this is going to happen, so please bear with us as we unfold this journey together. So here's the format for the rest of the show today. We're going to have 2 panels today. Each are about 30 minutes each. We're going to start with one right now. Amy Watson and Matthew Brown are going to be your moderators today. Thank you so much for our moderators. After the first panel, we're going to have a wicked show with Shayla Miller. Thank you, Shayla Miller Band. And then we'll have another panel with some more speaking and some QA. So there'll be tons of time. There's a mic out in the front. There's mics up here. There's also a QR code to the right of the stage. And you can go up, take a picture of it, and up will pop a thing called the Thought Exchange. And you can get in there and supply your questions and feedback about food security or anything you hear today. So check that out by following the QR code. We'll post it for the online visitors. Most importantly, big love to our speakers that showed up. Local growers, Kasla Food Hub, Kootenay Co-op, Mr. Mercy Mushrooms, Feed Your Soul Foods, yes, Brian Goldstein, the Food Policy Council, Cranbrook Urban Farm, all the way from Cranbrook. Give it up for Cranbrook. Permaculture Canada, somewhere here. Young Agrarians, awesome. All the local restaurants and grocers. And a huge thank you to all our sponsors for making this festival possible, including Creative BC, Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism, Kootenay Co-op, Nelson Credit Union, the Langham Kootenay Lake Innovation Center, the Mountain Culture Group. Woo! Give it up for the sponsors. Give it up for the speakers. Give it up for the musicians, especially our vendors. A few of them couldn't make it today, but there is Feed Your Soul Foods, yeah. Donna will also be on a panel later. So today is not just about talks. It's about making connections, as you guys are already doing. I saw so much connection making happening out there. While the music is playing, take the time to get to know each other. Ask questions and discuss ideas about food security. We'll be coming around actually recording some of you. So if you don't want to do the thought exchange online, you can record your thoughts and we'll post all those thoughts in a wonderful way after. Or you can actually ask the panelists some questions. Again, just log into the thought exchange. And finally, hello to all those live streamers out there. We're live streamed to YouTube, Facebook, all of the channels on KootenayMountainCulture.com. A big, big, big thanks to this guy behind the scenes over here. His name is Dave Ronald. You can't see him. He'll come and show. And his wicked assistant, Lee. All Ears Production for the amazing sound and video work. This is the 4th year we've been working together. Yeah, Dave. All Ears Production. Live stream to the world. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Let's make this festival a fruitful ground for innovative solutions and lasting connections. Enjoy the day. And we will start with the first panel, which is Amy Watson. And our first speakers. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Oh, yeah. It's supposed to go that way.
So you guys come up here, right? All right. Hi, everybody. So we'll introduce everybody in a second. I think you just come on up. Center stage. All these wonderful people. Hi, everybody. Hello. My name is Amy Watson. I've lived in Castle for 25 years, and I'm currently the Regional District Director for Area D, which is 24 unincorporated communities from Ainsworth up to Gerrard, and the board chair for the Central Kootenays. Previous to that, actually 19 years ago, I came here from farming on the coast. Huh? Okay, not me, okay. I used to farm on the coast where I met Patrick. You're not on this panel. I got to look at you out there. And we did the first food forum, which was in about 2007. Out of that food forum came the Food Security Project. Out of that became the Food Hub. And then it was the first accredited food hub in Canada right here in Caslow. So I did that with Betty Gutierrez, who used to run the Taquita and is still doing lots of food fun things. And we did so many projects, Lawns to Garden. We did the first food charter for the Kootenays here in Caslow. So it's been an amazing community to live in. Go Caslow, man, in North Kootenay Lake. And I do also want to acknowledge this is also the unceded territory of the Tanaka. And if you go a little north, the Secwepemc, and a little south, you go Silks as well. So lots of shared territory. And now we have the wonderful panel of seeing how many amazing things can occur when you have a supportive community and shared interest in good food. Good food isn't just about nurturing yourself, it's about community, it's about the future, it's about sustainability, and it's about changing what is actually destroying us as a species. So these people are my heroes, as well as many of you out there. So thank you to all of you. So I actually don't know your bios. I know Robin because you do mushrooms and we know each other. So as I ask you questions, I'm actually going to first ask you to tell us who you are and what you're doing and why do you do it? What brought you to it? So Robin, Marley, Nai, and Brian. Did I get that right? Nairi, sorry. Okay. We met on Zoom a couple years ago, so I had a bit of a gap there. So how about I hand over the mic? First question to you guys is, why do you do what you do? And what do you do?
Hey everyone, I'm Robin Mercy and my business is Mr. Mercy's Mushrooms, and quite honestly I think you can trace back why I do what I do to when I was about 8 years old and had a mold collection in jars in my bedroom. It all kind of just spiraled from there. I spent a lot of time in forestry, I learned about ecology, I learned about wild mushrooms, and it's just been so fun and inspiring and creative to since 2017 to do this as a job, and it's really thanks to everyone out there that I'm able to do it. So yeah, an immense amount of gratitude to all of you. Did that kind of answer it? What do you do? I grow mushrooms.
Just say who you are, your name, what you do.
Okay, hello, I'm Marley. I work with Community Connection Society in Cranbrook. So it's a social outreach organization that does all sorts of things. They run the homeless shelter in Cranbrook. They have tons of resources for seniors and women and young children. And I work under all the food program umbrellas. So we run Cranbrook Food Recovery as well as the Cranbrook Public Produce Garden. But today I'm here to talk to you about the Cranbrook Urban Farm, which is an upcoming, our latest project, and hopefully will be up and growing by September of this year. We are going to have a completely enclosed hydroponic farming unit on a public city park in Cranbrook, and yeah, we'll be growing fresh greens all year round, which is so important for this region with our short summers and less predictable weather patterns. So trying to be part of the innovative solution to kind of produce greens locally. And this project will be a social enterprise that will kind of feed back into our existing programs, and part of the produce grown will also be donated through our food recovery stream. And yeah, I guess my background is I did a master's of urban agriculture in green cities, so I'm excited I'm new to the area and I'm excited to kind of have an impact for the food security in Cranbrook and be able to demonstrate some of the solutions that can be applied throughout the region. So, thank you.
Thanks, Marley.
Hello, I am Nairi Marsh. I'm the Columbia Basin and Boundary Region land matcher for the Young Agrarians. The Young Agrarians started in 2012. It is the largest farmer-to-farmer education resource network in Canada. We host a lot of events. We have a whole lot of programs. Coming up next month in July, we have July 14th, we are doing a farm tour in Salmo called Salmo Tour de Farm. It's going to be an 18-kilometer round trip cycling to go to 3 of the farm stands. That's my home community as well, so it's really exciting. So we'll go to Salix and Sedge, we'll go to Clutch Farm and Forest Farm, and among those farms, they grow fresh produce, fruit, eggs, meat, cheese, which is really exciting at Forest Farm, and as well as making soap, wool products, all those kinds of things. So that's really Young Agrarian's main purpose, is supporting farmers. Our mission is to grow the next generation of ecological farmers by providing access to education, mentorship, training, business support, community networks, and land. And last year we worked with over 2,600 farmers. And one of the most important things that we offer with our programs is that farmer-to-farmer support network. And that happens at our events, where people get to share stories and share skills and just generally have a great time together. And I came to Young Agrarians through a long kind of career of market gardening as well as subsistence gardening. I started at age 19 on Salt Spring Island on leased land. Throughout my entire time of farming, I always leased land, even when I owned land. So working for the BC Land Matching Program has been really important to me, because we're helping to bridge that gap of the lack of affordability of farmland with how expensive it is to start farming, and sometimes the low revenues in the early years, and sometimes beyond the early years of local farming. And the BC Land Matching program is helping to address that. And so when I got the opportunity to come over and do this and help farmers find land, I took it, and I love it. Get to spend all my days chatting with farmers and with landholders. So if you're a farmer who's curious about getting started in farming, or a landholder who thinks you may want to have farmers on your land, get in touch.
Thanks, Nairi.
Hi, I'm Brian Goldstein. I am one of the owner-operators of Zero Fox Tree Crops. It's a small nursery. We're located, we grow all of our stuff down in Harrop, BC. We live here in Caslow, where we pack all the trees and do all the office work. And a little bit about me is I'm from the States. I grew up in Colorado and kind of specialized in cold climate agriculture, and did a bunch of the market gardening stuff. And honestly, I got burnt out on annuals. We were doing the same work every year, and annual production is really important and fills a lot of our food security needs. And then the permaculture bug bit me, and I was like, well, is there something we can supplement this with? And perennials just jumped out. Tree crops really kind of made a lot of sense, and but it's not super accessible. Even from a standpoint, right? You're looking at 10-year lead times with some of these tree crops before you get yields. And then even if you want to get started, you look to go buy some of these things, and you're looking at $120 potted walnut trees. So how could you ever get started? And I started learning about starting some of these plants. Realized how easy it was. They want to grow, and so we basically made a mission to get tree crops accessible to people. So we do everything online. We send stuff all over Canada, and it's exciting because I like offering stuff to people in the Kootenays, because a lot of the genetics that I source are from this region, and it's kind of like find the tree and grow it. If I see something cool sitting on the side of the road and it's just loaded with fruit or nuts, and it's raining down on the ground but clearly hasn't been taken care of in a long time, that's the type of stuff that gets me fired up for food security. And we're standing on the backs of the people who've come before us. The Doukhobors planting walnuts 100 years ago. This was a tree crops farming region. It was the main economy after mining kind of fell through in the early 1900s. So started learning some of that history, and you see how productive these things can be. You put all these, connect all these dots, and you're like, well, tree crops really could be the way to support a bioregional food security plan. And the Kootenays grows trees really well. So it all kind of lined up. We worked with young agrarians, and we're land matched with some lovely people in Harrop. And, we're on a small piece of land, but, on just an acre and a half, we're able to grow a lot of trees. And so it's kind of that I think it's an Emerson quote where it's like, holding an acorn in your hand is like holding 1,000 forests. There's really a lot of potential, and it seems small, it seems slow, and getting the chance to kind of look into the future and see these mature trees and what they can provide, and what they ask is so little and what they provide is so much. The tree crops cultures around the world that celebrate these types of things, and they create economies, they create families and culture. And so just to be part of that was really exciting. Running a small business is not as just glamorous as you would think it would be, right, at first. And so I have a lot of respect for anybody in the space who's doing it. Any of these guys up here who are supporting producers or are producers, and just kind of the enthusiasm to be part of a bioregional food movement. So yeah, that's kind of who I am and why I've been doing some of this stuff. Here you go, Amy.
Thanks, Brian. You can hang on to it. I'll use this one. Oh my God, I took so many notes. How much time do we have? I just want to go off something you just said. They want to grow. And I think that's something that when I first got into farming and food, the thing that inspired me the most, I used to sell china and crystal to really rich people. And I was so disturbed by it. And then plants were like, hello, can you help me? And I feel like as humans, our gift and vice versa to plants is they want to grow, and we're here to help them. So it was just a lovely catch. I wanted to do that. And thank you for all of you for helping them to grow. In terms of, it's really interesting to look at the history of the Kootenays. If anyone hasn't read Lost Orchards by Joan Lang, one of many, many books. But if you want to know how was the Kootenays in colonial history designed, it is actually around food. It's around boats and trains. Caslow is here because we had a boat that came in. Trout Lake was popular because there was a boat. Poplar Creek was popular for a while because they thought they were going to mine it, but didn't happen. But you had tulips up there, sold all over the world. Caslow won #1 cherry in the world in 1935 in San Francisco. So we are based on food in many, many ways, not just resource extraction. I'm going to talk too much. So one of the things that we first, when we first started the food security project, and we were really looking to harness that food security, it was such a catch term. People thought I was talking about food safety for a long time when we first started talking about it. But to develop the food charter and to get funding to build the food hub, one of the things we did is all the roads were shut down. There's only 3 roads into Caslow. They were all shut down from a landslide or a snowstorm. I can't remember what it was. But I went and took pictures of the grocery store. Vancouver has 3 days of food available if distribution stops. Caslow has a day and a half. So I took pictures of that, and we then went and distributed that as part of our funding group. And this was 2007. And so we went and said, hey, so this is how vulnerable we are. And that's what created some funding opportunities. So this leads to the question I have for you guys now, and I'm going to just let you guys choose who wants to go first. One of the primary barriers to food systems is actually distribution. It's regional distribution. When we would talk to different folks that wanted to maybe buy food from Russell when he was farming down in Harrop, it would have to go to Vancouver first and then come back. Kind of a loose description, but that's how it would work. And coming to Caslow from Nelson was double the price of Vancouver to Nelson. And so regional distribution of food is actually a really critical tool to change the system. My question to you guys is, what innovative ways have you seen this working, or what are your ideas, having been in the market, having worked with the products themselves or working with farmers? What are the creative ideas to build a regional distribution food system? And whoever wants to go first.
You going?
All right, I'm holding the microphone. I'll go first. So yeah, it's a good question. Because I mean, just in the last 5 years, right, the things we've seen are alarming, right? Was it November of 21 or something?
2021.
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, things shut down in BC. So when the distribution network shut off, the hairs on the back of your neck start standing up and go, we are pretty fragile out here. And, I guess what I can speak on in terms of what perennial crops can do for this area, and really just food distribution in general, is closing the feedback loops, compartmentalizing things so there's tighter response time. So, when we look at how we store and distribute food, you think about perishability, right? Really fresh things that need to get into people's homes immediately. Those are hard to move around. They require a lot of storage, a lot of infrastructure. Luckily, there's tree crops, right? I just give a walnut as an example. Dried properly, that thing's shelf stable for many months, up to beyond a year. I still have a bucket of walnuts I'm eating on that I collected last November. And this isn't just a novelty food; these are staple foods, right? And there's cultures built up around it. Whether you think of canning, drying, different ways of preserving these perennial foods. There's, we're not inventing the wheel here. So that's kind of my perspective, is that perennial crops, they're really good for storing food in like a sustainable way that doesn't require a ton of infrastructure. And a lot of that actually comes through, it's great to eat tree crops. It might even be better to feed them to animals. So, playing into, how we can build up these ecosystems, so we're not just, acting carbon neutral, but we're building, right? We're building soil. We're increasing, some kind of diversity into our ecosystem lives. And when I say animals are almost better at this, like a mulberry tree. Awesome for eating. If you have a mulberry tree, you'll pretty much get burnt out on mulberries by the end of July, and it'll still be producing fruit, in August and September. And there's a great book called Tree Crops by J. Russell Smith. It was written in like the 30s. He was a pretty foundational dude for this stuff. And he talked about how, one mulberry tree could put 100 pounds on a pig. Farmers want to get paid for the produce that they come out with. And that makes a lot of sense. And when there's excesses, it's hard to capitalize on that. It's losses a lot of the time. So, to run it through animals, to have that kind of system, is really beneficial. It takes work out of the system for us. It's value added. It gives a shelf life, and it compartmentalizes it, and it keeps it local, right? There's a lot of opportunity for different stakeholders to be involved, and from a health standpoint, it kind of meets all those needs. So, I guess that'd be my perspective.
Awesome, thank you. When we're talking about vulnerability, I can talk about a couple of things that we're doing right now, and then kind of a need that we're seeing that we have some opportunity to tackle in Cranbrook. But with the urban farm, just growing locally and throughout all 4 seasons, I think helps with a lot of vulnerability, just in terms of decreasing dependency on imports from the get-go. And then with our food recovery program, we also want to capture a lot of the food waste, or like in the in the growing seasons when there's lots of certain things coming off trees and getting harvested, a lot of that ends up going to waste if it can't get distributed. So some of the projects we're working on is storing the food and doing different workshops, and we have an amazing chef that dehydrates things, and we want to expand our kind of canning and different types of preservation. And a piece that goes with that is the food literacy associated with that, so that people, if we want to be more self-sufficient, that people are used to eating things in different ways or different forms throughout the year. So it will be more normalized to have pickled things in the winter months and things like that. And then in Cranbrook, a lot of what we're hearing from like super small producers is that the cold storage and cold distribution is really hard to access. So regionally, creating kind of nodes for distribution so that small-scale farmers have a space to store food, and they can kind of partner up with a number of local producers to kind of save money on truck stop fees and kind of just getting all of that into one place so that, we can capitalize on that.
Awesome. I really like what both of you said, and I'll pick up on some of those threads. And by the way, I thought we were doing like the 15-second intro off the bat. I actually have a lot of things to say, so bear with me. I really like the perishability piece that both of you spoke to. As a mushroom farmer, I'm delivering to Nelson twice a week, every week, to get my mushrooms fresh to customers, both to restaurants and grocers like the Kootenay Co-op, as well as doing CSA programs. So perishability is a huge thing. And I was chatting to the manager of the Kootenay Co-op there just beforehand, and I'm sure he'll speak to this as well, but I'm, one of the true local suppliers to the Kootenay Co-op, and there are, 160, you said, ish? I feel so many of us in that like micro to small to even mid-sized farmer category are really, reinventing the wheel every time. We're all trying to figure out this distribution piece for ourselves. And I think the reality of it is, if you're a small farmer, like often there are economies of scale, and sometimes the only thing that makes sense is to, load up bins into the back of your truck and drive it where it needs to go at that scale. But I love your idea of, nodes, and just given the reality that there are so many small producers just working together. I mean, just a tiny example of this is I'm mostly local within the West Kootenays here, but the mushrooms do go as far as Kimberley, and Stoke Juices has a nice distribution loop. They're helping out a lot of other local producers to move things around. So I've jumped on that to get on the Stoke train, so they're moving a little bit further. So either, just small organic synergies like that, or more coordinated systems for distribution are super key, as is the preservation piece. And that goes back to what things can we preserve, and also how do we eat that? And as a culture, we might need to do some reorienting and education about like what it means to eat a seasonal diet, because I think we can definitely make transportation more efficient, but I think we also need to change the way that we expect to eat to really solve that puzzle.
Yeah, the distribution thing. If anyone wants to learn more about the challenges of distribution, there's so much literature written about it by studies funded by Columbia Basin Trust and also Central Kootenay Food Policy Council. From where I see it, as both a farmer and then I was a food processor, so my food, and I shipped frozen food with a special handling protocol, so I've really been fascinated by shipping in our region and distribution and all of that. But what I'm seeing is that it's the farmers that are really leading the innovation on all of this, and it really is about changing not just that we want to distribute everything out, but how we process and deliver food in the region, including with groups like in Cranbrook. But you look at Kootenay Meadows Dairy, we're one of the few regions in BC that has our own liquid milk processor on farm. Like, these are very rare things to have, and Kootenay Meadows Dairy does a lot of deliveries for a lot of people with their reefer truck, just like Stoke Juice, just like so many. So I just see so many farmers are innovating and filling these gaps, and then that is the opportunity in our communities, is that we do start having more of this shelf-stable food being produced within our communities, which I know is the hope of a lot of the food hubs and a lot of the other things. But we really are seeing this innovation in action, and we're quite spoiled for incredible food and food processors and people going to great lengths, like Forest Farm getting their cheese license, Kootenay Meadows Dairy. They're really pushing into systems that weren't built for their scale. And they're doing it, and keeping that food local and hyper local, and that might be in the end the solution. That we can't, it's just not viable for all of these little communities to ship outwards, because the trucking companies have proved it's not affordable and not terribly viable. And so, I mean, so far, fingers crossed someone sorts it out. But yeah, so I just want to say that it's the farmers that I see really leading the innovation on all of this.
Thanks, Nari. I have to say that when the pandemic hit, I know that being in Kaslo was a foreseen idea of many of us. And one of them was that when we started the food security project and we were farming, I used to farm on the Lower Mainland where you'd sell salad for $25 a pound, because it was probably more than that, because that's who could afford it, was high-end restaurants. And this kind of dance where we're slowly moving, where the globalization of our food system is starting to show its external costs at the forefront, at the cash register, local food system becomes actually the more affordable choice. It's only not been the affordable choice because we heavily subsidize the global system. So I think we all know that. It doesn't change if your pocketbook is small. But I am seeing that shift, and it gives me some hope, even though it's scary to look at what you're paying for food. It does give me hope that we're starting to see that local food is actually not just the healthiest choice for yourself, but for the planet. We started an ugly food movement many, many years ago, because when we would sell these to the restaurants, everything had to be a certain size and be a certain picture. And I'm like, well, the beet's big. Who cares? And so I really love I can't stop thinking about mulberry infused chicken right now, because that just sounds amazing. How much time do we have, Sean Mark? I was not watching the time. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm going to talk the whole time. I am growing a coffee plant. I'm all for seasonal eating, but I'm growing a coffee plant, and ginger and turmeric this year. I think really just building off the coordination and the synergy piece, there was a lot of this work we tried 15 years ago that was coordinated, and it was almost like too structured for it to work in this, organic farming. You need some synergy. You need some, you didn't try too hard. It just happened. And the Stoke connection, I can assume, happened in that inorganic way. So I think it's a combined effort to really look at what are the systems in place, where are people going, and also just networking, because it will happen. So I just wanted to note that. And Jessica Piccini, I don't know if that's how you say her last name. Piccinin. Okay. Root and Vine. They are killing it with their Kootenay Lake Loop and willing to look for anything you want. So I think that's probably the most kind of grassroots system I've seen. So all of that to say, ready for your next question. I actually am curious if, we talked a bit about innovative approaches to regional distribution. The more rural you are, the more difficult it is to be urban-based. So there's kind of we live in a very vast geography, so it does come down to coordination and working together. But as leaders for decades in the food system, what do you draw your inspiration from? I think maybe the state of the world might be it, but are there inspiring people that you've been I want to continue that person's legacy? Or anything else that's inspired you, if it's a tree, if it's a chicken, whatever. Whoever wants to go first.
I guess I'm holding. Well, I got inspired to start farming because I ate lunch at a certified organic farm on Hornby Island, and it was the best food I'd ever eaten. And I just wanted to do that and eat like that. And farmers are still the people that inspire me. I talk a lot about farmers. But that is who inspires me. There's a lot of really interesting projects. I'm seeing more folks get involved in, circular systems. There's an incredible lamb farmer out in Briscoe who has started pelleting waste wool. She's doing these really innovative things. I didn't know until I met her that, because I've never raised sheep, but that most of the wool in BC just gets burned. All these fleeces they're either unsuitable for yarn, they're not worth the value of getting them processed to then sell the end product. And we've also got an issue, especially in the Kootenays, of the interface between wild sheep and domestic sheep. The domestic sheep pass Movi along to the wild sheep, and it's fatal to wild sheep. So this farmer is going to farmers and asking if she can work on behalf of the Wild Sheep Federation to test their flocks, and then she buys all their fleeces from them at above market value, and then she's pelleting it into fertilizer pellets. And so they can be used in forestry applications, farm applications. They help hold more moisture in the soil. It's literally just little balls of wool. And so things like that, all of it, just everything. The people I'm on the stage with, that's what keeps me doing this work and inspiring me, because 25 years into farming, I am never not interested. There's always something new, always something interesting, always something innovative, always something that's tech appropriate, or all of those things. It's just really exciting to me. That's what inspires me.
All right. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of people, past and present, that have inspired me. I guess I'll just give two examples, one from a long time ago and maybe one more contemporary. Yeah, like the vision I see for getting, I guess, tree crops into a food security system is getting the right genetics. I was just having a conversation, like a red oak tree it'll grow anywhere. You don't need to seek out a special red oak tree per se. But there are a lot of other question marks. You kind of go over these temperate species all-star food producers, and a lot of them are growing south of us. And in this region, right, we're just kind of at the head of where a lot of these crops can maybe make it happen. And so I guess the example I would talk about is, the breeders of the past, like the big people in the movement. I mentioned J. Russell Smith. John Hershey is another one. They're in the lovely, we'll call it easy growing environment of Pennsylvania. But that aside, they basically got obsessed with tree crops. And this is back in the 30s, pre-green revolution, where we had all the fertilizers and pesticides come in from the war. And, they basically saw the degradation of the landscape from annual agriculture. And they started turning towards perennials. And, the tree bug bit them, and they started collecting things, chestnuts, walnuts, honey locusts, all these amazing tree crops, and they just started making these massive collections. So as they stand, they still exist, right? They're being protected as much as they can be, potentially getting turned into condos. But it's a lot of the material that, people in my space look for. I try to import across the border if I can. And in Canada, our example is Jack Gallatley. He's was a grower in Kelowna. He started the Gallatley Nut Farm, I think in the early 1900s it was, and basically was breeding chestnuts, walnuts, and hazelnuts for British Columbia. And so that project went on for 75 years. Eventually, the family was going to sell it off and turn it into condos. People in Kelowna saw the value of it and was able to preserve it as a regional park. And so now you can go there and collect nuts just as a U-pick. And that's where we get a lot of our genetics from. And I just see it's like, wow, this guy put a lot of work in here to find the chestnut trees that'll work in BC. And so, the potential in that to go outwards, is a lot. And in this region, a good example, my friend Forrest McCormick, he runs McCormick Farms over in Burton, BC. And he's on a huge amount of acreage. He's planting so many trees. This will be kind of the test piece of this region, at least on a timeline point of view. It's like he's doing it now. You look at this huge 25-acre field, one of his pastures, and you're like, it's just a field. I'm like, no, it's a forest. It's just all the trees are that big, right? But he's just throwing stuff at the wall. I've helped inspire him to start a bunch of his own trees. We're putting our stuff out there. His ability to, think in systems, to manage animals in the landscape, and have the foresight and excitement to be able to put in these little trees and go, maybe, right? And it's not just a losing gamble, because the exciting thing to see is that his mom was planting these nut trees from this Gallatley site 30 years ago, and now they're these big walnut trees that just really, really amazing yields, and you're looking at just really high-end potential for what it would mean to feed a region, right? And a relatively, not a huge space could produce so much food. So that's kind of like the modern innovation of a genetic resource, like a repository, right? And I think anywhere could use this, right? The Kootenays needs it, but everywhere needs it, where we have either private or public spaces that we're conglomerating things that might work, right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. If they won't, they'll show themselves over time. We'll make those decisions. And when they do work, it'll be, like when you're driving a Castlegar from Nelson, you can spot hundreds of giant walnut trees that are relics left over from, when we used to care about these things 100 years ago. And nobody waters them, nobody feeds them anything, and they're just pouring down food. And that's kind of a glimpse into a future we could have when we just try, when we experiment. And so that's kind of the, I guess, contemporary regional example that I'd give.
Nice. Nice. Thanks, Ryan.
I would say my inspiration, at least for like environmental stewardship, kind of started even as a kid. I grew up on an island in Ontario, and basically the whole island, a lot of it's transitioning now to more organic, but a lot of it is just growing Monsanto crops, and you kind of see the impact with all the algae blooms getting worse every year and all the frogs disappearing and things like that. And then going to school in Vancouver, you see all these programs that are working and that are bringing people together and accessing all this local food and getting people excited about it. And it just seems so simple. But I think the biggest inspiration for us now for our organization are these hubs that are kind of pinpointing issues along every step of the food chain, from production to food literacy, and then capturing food waste, and kind of like the food hub here, like having a roof for that and having somewhere that people can actually go and associate like better food with that, I think is really cool. And a lot of the neighborhood houses in Vancouver are also doing this. They have gardens and programs for food literacy and cooking programs and meal programs, and they're feeding the people. And I think that's the most inspiring, is when people are actually getting together to eat the good food and kind of seeing that come full circle. That's kind of an inspiration for our future projects. And yeah, kind of our dream is to have a center where all of these programs can live in a physical place together, and people can know that they can go there and access these resources.
Okay, I think I'm going to go in two different directions here. So I grew up in Argenta, and let's see. I think I came by my value set for small, local, organic food fairly naturally. I mean, a lot of the people who are around in my childhood, we've got Gary and Donana up at TP Land, now Argenta Gardens. We've got Vince McIntyre up there. We've got my mom, who's still gardening like 40 years later. All of these back to the land homesteaders from the 70s, 80s. I really grew up in that, and that value set just for small, simple, local, organic. It's very instinctual. I didn't have to see, up close the counter examples of Monsanto, algae, whatever. But as a mushroom farmer, it's a fairly high tech field, and I'm probably the lowest tech mushroom grower out there. I'm pretty just lazy. But I don't know. I can roll with it. One of my greatest passions is just helping other people to grow, whether it's just gardeners or small farmers, people who just want to do a cool DIY project. I really like seeing how you can take the mystery out of it and just do something simple and practical that gets you a lot of food. But in this kind of higher tech mushroom landscape, I really look for examples that just are really effectively using waste streams, and both on the input and output end. And one really cool example is a young man, I can't remember his last name, it's Alex someone out in Alberta, who he's doing a really cool thing. He was in the brewing industry, and he's using the spent grains from the malting process. He's growing oyster mushrooms on them, and then he got some grant funding to do research on this, and he realized that post-fruiting, those spent grains, once they'd been myceliated and broken down, they were actually a much better feed for cattle. Those nutrients are much more bioavailable after the myceliation of the spent grains. So that's like you're using a waste stream from one industry, using it for food in a completely different one, and then improving your inputs in a third industry. That's just like insane lateral thinking. I think as farmers, like, it's what we do, right? Like, permaculture didn't invent it. You've got to use what you have. You've got to use what's available and what's cheap, and you have access to. And I think that's just a beautiful example of like some really creative thinking to solve that. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Robin. So I think we're at time for this panel, but I just want to say, I want to share my inspiration. My inspiration is how crazy the world is and the fact that we can take control of that through working and digging in the soil. I love soil. Your story of Alex, we don't know his last name, discovering these different things is like, to me, soil is the most creative and inspirational, and like, who knows what you could do with it. It's amazing. And it's the best carbon sequester. So that and Bruce Sterneen. I can't not mention Bruce Sterneen. If anyone's ever read his old zine, The Ram's Horn, and you want to know a history of the politics of the global food system, boom, that'll inspire you. And all of you guys. You guys are hugely inspirational. Thank you for everything you're doing. Keep doing it. And when you need some inspiration yourselves, look to all the people that are about to clap for you. Thank you. Nice work, you guys.
That was awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, AB Watson and all our speakers. Woohoo! That was inspirational. I'm floored, actually. Yeah, we're just going to switch here quickly and get the band on. There's also Sweet Witch. And Serge's from Greece to Green. He was the poutine man of the Kootenays. He is now growing lots of green. Take a look back there. And help yourselves with some food. DM. Be back in a second.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Caslow. This was fun. See you out there.
Yeah, give it up for Sheila Miller and the band. Thank you so much for coming all the way.
From Alberta.
And you were on tour, though.
Well, we are in and out of tour.
In and out of tourness. Yeah. Check it out online. Hope you all at the live stream are enjoying this right now. Give us a thumbs up to Sheila Miller. Sheila Miller. Yeah, so we got another panel coming up, folks. And so glad you're sticking around here. We've got Matthew Brown, Councillor Brown, and the panel. You guys all come on up here. Ooh, well, we still have a few minutes. Don't forget to enter in your thoughts in the thought exchange. You can use the QR code to the right of the stage, or come and see me. If you have any thoughts, I'll record them and put them into our wicked new AI generating thought machine that will weave all the stories together, including the speakers and you, the audience, plus every single event that we're doing this year into a wonderful new story that's both visual and textual. So stay tuned for that. And here's our lovely panel up next.
All right, thank you, JM. Thank you to everybody for coming today. My name is Matthew Brown. I'm a councillor here in the village of Caslow. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I've ran Conscious Growth Gardens and Landscaping for about 10 years. I've been growing food here in the Kootenays for about 20 years, and really excited to be up on the stage with all these great panelists. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I'd love to start. If you could just introduce yourselves and speak a little bit about what you're doing here in the Kootenays.
Shall we just come over?
I think that's your microphone.
This is it. Yeah.
Okay, hi there. I'm Patrick Steiner. I live in Caslow here, and I work for the Caslow Food Hub, which is the food security program at Caslow Community Services. And so I'm one of 2 employees there, and we have many great volunteers. And some of the programs we run include the local food cupboard, the farmers market. We have some really great community libraries, like a seed library and a culinary tool library. And we've engaged with like everything from film festivals and other workshops, learning opportunities to kind of just bring education around food issues, food cooking, food preservation, and food skills to residents of the Caslow area and up the lake as well.
Thank you, Patrick.
Hey folks, thanks for having me. My name's Dirk. I'm from the Kootenay Co-op. I grew up in Saskatchewan in a real small town, farming, and came by food honestly. It was always interesting to me. It was never organic. It was always large scale, commercial, hundreds of acres. But I found a small farm up in Pemberton called the North Arm Farm, and that's where I found organic farming and learning about smaller agriculture and different ways of approaching food. And 25 years ago, I came to the Kootenays for the first time and fell in love with it, but left, unfortunately. Moved to Vancouver and did a number of things in urban farming, had a small business called Sky Harvest, and worked in commercial composting with net zero waste, but always had my hands in the food industry until I found grocery retail, and eventually it led me back here to the Kootenays, and I'm really happy to be here and happy to learn about this community and how food works here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Dirk.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Brandon, and I'm from Permaculture Canada. I'm a Canadian, and I've lived in Alberta and BC and Ontario, back in BC and back in Alberta. And I run a design firm out of Calgary, Alberta now with permaculture designers from all over the world. And we create demonstration sites of permaculture to teach communities how they can incorporate that into their neighborhoods, as well as do on-site consulting and designs anywhere from 1/8 of an acre to 160 acres in Africa. So we're doing a lot of different types of projects. I have 2 companies actually that I'm working with right now. One of them is on the start of armagarden.world. Yeah. And that's more for, the prepper folks and the homesteader folks that are ready to do the work and really want to be there doing the work and are connected to the land, and that's their lifestyle. So Armagarden is geared towards them and getting stronger in building bonds between communities. And I'm currently doing a demonstration site in Kansas where this is being demonstrated on a big scale, where people are really gathering together and they're, buying a train car of wood together, and they're building each other's houses, and they're taking care of each other's animals. And it's amazing to see that happening on a broad scale all over the States. And I'd like to see more of that in Canada. So I see myself as the mycelia web. I have this overarching viewpoint of what people are doing all over the place, and I'm making a lot of connections. And right now I'm on a BC tour, just going to permaculture farms and seeing how things are done and how people are making things work for them. And I'd like to see them all come together. So I'm a little spider and I'm weaving a web, and I hope you'll join me.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Hello, I'm DM McLennan, and I am the owner of Feed Your Soul Foods. So Feed Your Soul Foods is a small business that operates here in Caslow. We've been here since 2003, 2004, maybe 2004. And the food business started when my son Gwendon was a tiny baby, and we lived in the Slocan Valley, and we were off the grid, and we were back to the landers, and we were super idealistic 20-year-olds who had very, very stringent ideas of what people should eat. So I wanted to feed you all what I thought you should eat. And I thought you should eat handmade, wholesome food with organic ingredients. And so I, at that time, we were really, really into the trade economy. And so I would put my son in a backpack on my back, and I would hitchhike into Nelson with a basket full of food. And some of the products we're still making now. The falafels cousin wrap, the Indonesian brown rice salad wrap, the chocolate oatmeal cookies, the almond butter bliss balls. These all started in the basket, and we're still making them. And the Kootenay Co-op has been instrumental in helping us expand as a business. They took our food on when they were in the old store on Baker Street, the other end of Baker Street. And the community has been fed and has been supporting this business for 2 decades. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. So the format is really going to be, I'm going to ask a question. Anyone who's moved to come up and answer, then please do so, and we'd love to hear all your thoughts. So we'll start off. Obviously there's a lot of challenges in the food security system. There's lots of challenges in life these days. When I see challenges, I see opportunities. So I guess my first question is, what are the most significant opportunities or needs for food production and distribution in the Kootenay bioregion? Anyone who would like to answer?
The Kootenays are a real special place, and coming from a place like Vancouver, where distribution is instantaneous and often, moving to Nelson was eye-opening, and working with the Kootenay Co-op for the first time and seeing some of the challenges with procurement and the movement of food, especially refrigerated goods. Earlier, the panel spoke to the 2021 landslides that happened, which then isolated the Kootenays even further. It's exceptional to think that a town and an area with so many people, 160,000-ish people in the RDCK, could be food insecure, and to feel so remote from a place like Vancouver where so much of our food is coming from on a regular basis. Before I came to the Kootenays, I worked in international trade. I imported goods from Greece and Portugal, olive oils and feta cheeses and stuff like that. And that gave me an interesting window into the logistics of moving product, not only across the ocean, but also across Canada, and then from there to regional partners to sell that product. And, there's so much that we could do, and one of the exciting things that's happening, and I won't speak too much to it because I'm sure you will, but the Food Policy Council is working on some collaborative approaches to moving food through this area, especially working with that last mile, that from a close nearby farm like, say, Salix and Sedge and Salmo to our store, where we can then retail it for them. There's a lot of opportunity in collaborating with local suppliers and farmers and vendors to make that last mile a little bit easier. It's been really eye-opening. I think I'll just circle back to that opening statement. It's a phenomenal place, and there's so much phenomenal local food, and such an opportunity to distribute it more and differently and collaboratively. So, thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of things came to mind there, Matt. And I'll give maybe 2 examples from the food production, like where are the opportunities in food production. Of course, there's probably lots, but the 2 that came to mind for me, one of them is about, not the primary producers, not the farmers, not the people producing the food, but more the people like DM here who are food processors, who are making a secondary product, a value-added product with food. And I've met a lot of people in the Kaslo area who've told me, who've even come to me thinking that the Kaslo Food Hub has, a big commercial kitchen that they can rent out, that it has that kind of space to use, which we don't. But there's a real need for that in the communities around the Kootenays that I see, is kind of commercial kitchen space that small budding enterprises that are making a food product, that want to build a little business out of things, that want to use local ingredients, make a food product, get it in stores, they often can't afford the startup costs of starting, building a commercial kitchen. So if there were ones in each community or at least spread around the Kootenays that were available, rentable space with all the kind of equipment that's needed for people to do that, I think that's a huge opportunity. And it's a place where a lot of collaboration can come together, because it could be a private enterprise approach. There's one like that in the Winlaw area, the Valley Kitchen. Or it could be something that's supported through a nonprofit, or even like a municipal partner or a regional government partner. So I think that's a huge area of opportunity. And then the second area that I think of as where there's a lot of opportunity in the Kootenays for food production is around season extension. So all of the farmers who are producing food on the land are often limited by the shorter window of growing time that we have here in the Kootenays, or by sometimes the temperatures. And even just right now, like this season, this year is a good example. If you know farmers, if you've been to farmers markets, you've probably been hearing a lot of their food is growing very slowly this year because of the cooler temperatures. But anything they're growing in high tunnels and greenhouses, for example, is still it's actually growing great, pumping out lots of food. So we've got lots of early greens and things like that they plant. But there's a lot of opportunity for growing a wide range of crops under tunnels. And I wasn't thinking of it as summer growing necessarily. It's helpful this summer, but just for giving us a little bit of extra time earlier in the spring and later in the fall, and even winter harvests. If you plant things at the right time of year in late summer, and that they're cold resistant food crops, they can be harvested from those high tunnels and greenhouses, which don't have to be heated spaces. They can be low tech, just plastic covering over hoops, all throughout the winter. So we could get a lot more local food production happening in the winter time and at the ends of our seasons that we don't have. That's another big opportunity for our area.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Go plant a tree. So I think that there's a lot of power there's a lot of us, right? So it doesn't have to be a top-down structure anymore. We got to decentralize the food system, and we all have to do our part. And whatever that looks like, it doesn't really matter. And really just bridge together and start trading plants, start trading your perennials, and get together in the spring and get together in the fall and have these gatherings where you're like, okay, I need to thin this out, so I'm going to trade you this for this, and take the capitalistic system out of it as well, so that it's free for everybody. So that's one thing I see. And the other thing is agrotourism and the bridging of, the food movement, as well as, the craft breweries and things like that. Like these people, they like the finer things in life. So they like the homemade sauces. They like the handcrafted, unusual morel mustard and things like that. So just like people intermingling in their communities with different sort of products. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay.
When I first heard the question, I'm like, well, this question's clearly not for me because I have nothing to say about that. And doesn't. But now that I hear everybody's answers, I'm like, wow, I'm doing agrotourism. And I think I really want to offer an encouragement to anybody who's overwhelmed with the idea of building a commercial kitchen. The kitchen that Feed Your Soul Foods started in, and we operated out of until December this past year. And I remind you that we started in 2004, so that's 2 decades of me working in a little basement kitchen that I can touch one side of it and I can touch the other. And I had only a residential oven and only like a hand mixer that you hold in your hands. You buy it at the hardware store. And this is what you blend your butter with your sugar. Like very simple means, and working with what you've got, there's a lot that you can do. For a small scale food producing or food manufacturer, there's, I can't remember what the category is in the food processing certification. Anyway, the health inspector will tell you. But basically, there's just simple parameters. You can turn a simple kitchen into a commercial space with the help of your health inspection body. What is it? Interior health. they'll help you. You can do it. It's really, I wanted to encourage you with that. And that, yeah, in Caslow, we have on the Facebook, there's a community sharing of plants page. And in the garden that I'm developing for Feed Your Soul Foods to have a seasonal cafe in, that's where the plants are coming from. It's from all of our neighbors being like, oh, you want succulents? Here's some succulents. And here's a pile of perennials. I don't even know what they are, but here they are, so yeah, I think that we are doing wonderfully as a small community of really pooling our resources. And that's another thing that crossed my mind when I heard you talking about trucking and how, with these catastrophic events that isolate our communities, we are so strong in our hearts and caring, and the way that we know each other and we notice when someone has need. That's remarkable. So yay on us. I think we're doing good.
Thank you, Dean. Community in action. So in the earlier panel, we heard quite a bit of talk about innovative ways that we're approaching food waste. So my question to the panel would be, what strategies do you use to minimize food waste in your operations?
I'm going to talk about that one just a little bit because where I work, Caslow Community Services, but at the Caslow Food Hub specifically, we have what's called a food recovery program. So we're partnering with a lot of our local food stores in Caslow, also from up the lake and even from some of the Nelson ones. And we collect what might become food waste for them, but it's just things that are nearing the end of their shelf life or getting close to that due date that are still perfectly edible, still perfectly good to eat, but that maybe don't meet quite what the consumer's looking for when they're paying, the retail price for something. And rather than them put it in the dumpster, they donate it to us. And we then repurpose that in a number of ways. We might be directly giving it out at the food cupboard. But if it's things that are, a little too wrinkled or not quite looking good enough or have too many parts of them that are bruised, we have a whole host of volunteers that work with us and transform those things into other value-added products. And so they get frozen, they get dehydrated, they get turned into sauces, into soup stocks, into stewed soup things. And so that's one way to work. Food doesn't need to be wasted. There's always someone down the line who can probably use it and repurpose it. So just saying that there are usually food recovery programs, and I know one of the other speakers in the panel before us from Cranbrook area, she also was part of a food recovery program in that city. And she was telling me that it's very strong in Kimberley and Cranbrook there. They have a lot of partners donating into it. But even in a small little town like Caslow and up the lake, we routinely have over the course of the year 22 different businesses that donate food to us at some point throughout the year. Some of them are a couple times a week. Others are maybe once a year. Some are, on a monthly basis. But anybody who's producing food tends to have some amount of food waste or who's retailing food. And our program helps to reduce that food waste in our community. So,
yeah. Thank you so much, Patrick. We're all lucky you do. Anybody else? Thank you, Nancy.
I always got to move the mic. I'm so small. Food waste. I'm coming from a food forestry sense of background things, and I'm saying build soil, right? So I know not all food can fall into that, but I don't want that also to deter people from wanting to have an orchard. Well, I won't be able to eat all the fruit. Well, your soil will build then. So let the tree fall, let it regenerate the earth, and yeah, that's my kibitz.
Thank you, Lindsay.
As a small food business, we have primarily done where we wholesale the food out, so we haven't had the retail waste situation. One small thing that we do to reduce our food waste is we take all our vegetable scraps and we make vegetable stock for our soups. And that's simple for anyone to do in any kitchen at all. You just take your trimmings and put them in the freezer, And you can even roast them in the oven, get a different layer of flavor with them, and add them to plain old water, or make bone broth as you wish. And that's one simple thing that we do.
Thank you, Diem.
Food recovery is an area where I'm really proud of the co-op. They have had a number of programs for a long time that have supported local food programs and donation programs. Furthermore, when food becomes unedible, our membership comes and picks it up, and they use it for their chickens or for their backyard composting programs. An area where we've recently partnered with Selkirk College. They're now taking some of our meat bones that we're not able to use or process further, and then they're processing that into soup broths and making foods for their students. As we know, it's an expensive place to be, and expensive to be in school and not earning a wage. And I just think it's fantastic what David is doing there in his kitchen program, and how he's trying to support his students. Speaking back to soil, I spent a lot of time in the composting industry, and this is a big opportunity in the Kootenays, because a lot of our organic waste is being landfilled at the moment. And, there's at least 30 to 35, maybe 40% of our garbage that's being landfilled. And we have finite space here, folks. In the Kootenays, one thing I've learned real quick is that there's not a lot of room. And these landfills cost $1 billion, I don't know, a lot of money to build. And that's got to come from us when we get there. And I think there's a lot we can do in the meantime around food waste, food recovery, looking at those organics that are currently ending up in a place that isn't very useful, and creating methane, et cetera, into some more usable resourcing, or finding a way to upcycle it, or turn it into compost and put it in your garden. But yeah, it's exciting times here in the Kootenays. I got to say, I've just been learning so much here about these systems, and just so happy to be learning about them and helping in any way I can to forward agendas in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. JM, how are we looking on time? We're looking good? All right, great. So obviously this year we've all seen a bit of a different year. We're standing out here in June wearing toques and jackets and trying to adapt to the cold. Unpredictability is kind of the only thing that's predictable. So can you discuss the impact of climate change on local food production and how you're adapting to it?
Microclimates. So, and trying everything, and not like obeying the rules and reading the package and doing all of that, and just trying whatever you want, right? And push the boundaries and try things for colder climates and warmer climates, and see what works. And then when it works, make sure that you start to share that with your neighbors, because it'll work for them too.
Thank you, Lindsay.
I'll answer this perspective from a previous portion of my life where I was a farmer and growing food, and definitely was dealing with climate change and the kind of unpredictability of it. And what I'll say is, as farmers, when we would talk about every farmer ends up getting a certain specialization, things that they figure out grow well on their land, things that they themselves do well at. They get certain amounts of equipment and experience at growing things. So specialization is something that a lot of farmers kind of end up narrowing how they produce food and what they grow. But when it comes to climate change, the best insurance policy is actually diversification. And so a lot of farmers are actually diversifying the crops that they grow, because you don't know what kind of season is going to come up, or whether it's extreme heat. There can be new pests, because pests aren't getting killed off as much in the winter times. Pests are increasing their range from the south up to the north these days. So diversity is really the name of the game for producers, to ensure that they'll have something that is producing well each season, that they'll have certain amounts of income streams coming in, even when certain crops fail because the weather isn't right for them. They'll have other crops that thrive. So with climate change, diversity is definitely one of it. And I think the biggest other thing that I've been hearing about more recently from farmer friends is water management. Water management is becoming really key. So whether it's water capture on farm, whether it's irrigation systems that minimize waste, but water management is really key for farmers these days as we get drier and drier climates. I wish we had a couple of other farmers up here, but maybe some of you might know more about that to talk about specifics, or maybe when we get to talking with the group here.
Thank you, Patrick.
One thing I think about with climate change is just supporting local and being local. In Mirror Lake, we are setting up our kitchen to receive public, and so that's a new thing. Mirror Lake has never had, as far as I know, a cafe of any sort. And I've had the neighbors stopping by, checking out what we're doing, and saying, "Oh, can I walk here from over there?" So our little trail networks and the ways that we connect as community and feed each other. That is a big part, I think, of reducing our footprint, is feeding each other. Feed Your Soul Foods doesn't distribute very far. We just deliver it to Nelson. And so having the small scale mentality, I think, really nourishes us as a community.
Thank you, Dean.
From the retail perspective, there's been a lot of implications with climate change, and particularly impacting things like produce. And there are some very significant areas that grow a large percentage of the food we that we consume, like Mexico and Southern California. And as you've heard on the news or seen, fires and floods and cold events and heat events and windstorms and you name it, our climate is changing. It impacted us in Greece, importing olives and olive oil, the skyrocketing prices from the fires and devastation that happened over there. The reliance on global trade to get food on our plates is remarkable and sometimes really scary. You think about bananas, $1.29 for organic bananas. I mean, that doesn't even cover the cost of what it is to do. This is a net zero program, So, and I agree, this local content, what's happening in the Kootenays, since I've been here, a year and a bit, and meeting some of these farmers. I was fortunate enough to go on a farm tour in November and chat with a few of our suppliers. It's remarkable what's happening here. I really think that the Kootenays should be quite proud of what they're doing here and how they're supporting their local food systems, because it's showing a lot of resiliency, and especially in these times where we don't know what's going to happen with some of these regions and areas as the climate continues to evolve, and where will we grow salad greens if we can't grow them in Southern California anymore, and where will we find these food resources to bring to our communities, and how will they get here, and how much will it cost? And there's often more questions than there are answers, especially at this time. So yeah, I would say I agree 100%. This local mindset, these local food systems are really what's important. And as mentioned earlier, I don't remember which panelist talking about eating seasonally. These are assets to your pantry, to be able to adapt to those kinds of changes and be resilient on your own food programs. So, yeah.
Thank you, Derek. So, we're good. All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for sharing with us, coming out and spending time and talking about all their knowledge, and really appreciate it. And I'm going to pass the mic back over to JM. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, give it up for Matt Brown. And our awesome panelists, awesome food professionals, all of you, all the speakers here today. Really, really appreciate you showing up and being super honest, forthright, and engaging. And this is the critical part that we're trying to establish here. Unfortunately, we're running short on time, so we're not going to do QA today, but we will do it in the next event. And you can always engage with us. It's super easy. First of all, go to the Thought Exchange. I'll be posting that link so you can all get into that. platform and engage about food security, from our professionals to you to this internet and the entire bioregion. You can do that online. Everybody on the live stream as well, you can go back and watch some of these great videos. Really, really appreciate you sharing those videos and recommending all these food production experts and their businesses to your friends. So big love to all the speakers here, including, of course, Kaslo Food Hub, the Kootenay Co-op, Mr. Mercy Mushrooms, Feed Your Soul Foods, Brian Goldstein, Central Kootenay Food Policy Council, Cranbrook Urban Farm, Permaculture Canada, Young Agrarians, all the local restaurants and growers, Sweet Witch in the back, and Surges from Greece to Greens. And everybody else that couldn't make it today because of the weather. Actually turned out pretty nice, eh? Yeah. Look at that. That was Raya Sun. Raya Sun brought this on. Thank you. And of course, our headliner band. Awesome to have Shayla Miller and her band. So thank you all for coming up. Next one's coming up July 20th. It's going to be energy, decentralized energy, and all your favorite solutions from micro hydro to wind. The #1 solar power company's coming on. It's going to be super fun. Yeah, and then what'd you say? Down at the Bay, yes, thank you. It's going to be down at the Bay. It's not going to be here like every weekend last year. It's going to be down at the Bay next. And then after that, no, sorry. It's going to be at Vimy Park. Okay. I don't even know. I'm messed up. She's the one booking the venues. Okay, cool. So July 20th, check it up on your favorite BAT channel. And a huge thanks to our sponsors for making this festival possible. Nelson Co-op, the Kootenay Co-op, Creative BC, Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism, Nelson Credit Union, the Langham Kootenay Lake Innovation Center, Mountain Culture Group, and all you people for showing up and doing this thing. So thank you very much. Yeah! Cool. See you July 20th somewhere.
And let's get a big round of applause for JM.
One last round of applause for Dave Ronald and All Ears Production. This would not happen without this guy and his one-man band of live stream goodness.
I've got a whole lot more questions if you feel like it.
I guess we can turn off these amps.
Turn off what? Mics?